The Royal Governess Marion Crawford left Balmoral Castle after telling the truth. But what's the truth that is shocking to many? For nearly 2 decades, Crawford was the trusted educator and companion to Princess Elizabeth and Margaret, revered as a quiet, loyal member of the royal household. Yet behind the castle's granite walls and tartan carpets, she witnessed a side of royalty the public never saw. The isolation, the iron discipline, and a family struggling to balance duty with warmth. When she finally spoke out in a 1950 memoir, revealing unvarnished details of the princess's upbringing and the Queen Mother's cold distance, the establishment reacted with fury. She was banished from royal life, stripped of her legacy, and left to live in obscurity. Keep watching as we uncover the explosive truth that cost this governess everything. In the summer of 1852, Prince Albert quietly paid around $32,000 for Balmoral after spotting an advertisement during rainy weather. He didn't even mention it to Queen Victoria right away. Today, that amount would equal roughly $4.4 million. Only a few years later, the original house was demolished and replaced with a new granite castle completed in 1856. Prince Albert personally designed parts of it, including sketches for the clock tower. Over time, the property kept growing until it stretched across more than 53,000 acres, making it larger than cities like San Francisco or Paris. The estate included mountains, over 150 buildings, its own electricity system, and even a private 3-mile railway built in 1866 to secretly transport royal luggage. Even though Balmoral feels tied to Britain itself, it is not owned by the public. It belongs privately to the royal family. That means income from deer sales or rented cottages goes directly to them. Some members of Parliament criticized this arrangement, but Edward VII described Balmoral as the family's only true escape and refused to compromise. The castle itself looks like something from a Scottish storybook. Finished in 1856, it was built from pale granite that shines against the surrounding hills. Prince Albert involved himself in nearly every detail. He even adjusted the windows so fresh air flowed properly and added carvings of all 9 children near the entrance. The castle contains 167 rooms, though the hallways were intentionally made narrow so relatives would cross paths more often. Albert believed it would strengthen family bonds. The clock tower copied the style of a German castle and rings in E-flat so it wouldn't frighten the ponies. Critics at the time mocked the building and compared it to a giant freezing barn, but that didn't stop others from copying the design. Within 2 decades, around 80% of new Scottish country homes used the same style. Queen Victoria later described Balmoral as smelling of pine trees and freedom. When the royals arrive at Balmoral, a massive team arrives with them. During hunting season, close to 150 workers live on the estate. There are gillies, stable workers, cooks, cleaners, and even one employee whose entire job is to play bagpipes every morning at 7 a.m. beneath the king's window. Every worker signs a lifelong confidentiality agreement. Break it once, and you're immediately dismissed. Some maids spend up to 18 hours a day polishing hundreds of silver items and keeping fires burning in more than 50 fireplaces. Around 60 tons of birchwood are burned every season. Meals are often simple, including outdoor royal picnics near the river, where the king reportedly still washes dishes himself. Even so, the rules remain strict. Some employees are not allowed to speak unless directly addressed. Others must live on the estate full-time and help cull nearly 1,200 deer every winter. Staff wages cost more than $3 million yearly, mostly covered through timber sales and tourist cottage rentals. Every September since 1858, Balmoral hosts something unusual called the Gillies Ball. Staff members and royals attend together. The event begins at 7 p.m., with the king leading the opening dance alongside workers. On some nights, even a dishwasher might dance with the prince. People claimed Prince Philip once poured gin into a punch bowl to loosen the atmosphere. Princess Diana described the event as feeling like a mix between a school prom and Downton Abbey. Still, the strict class system never disappears. Invitations reveal each worker's rank. Senior staff received gold-trimmed invitations, while lower-ranking workers get plain ones. At midnight, the royals leave while everyone silently bows. In 1991, a young footman leaked a story about a barefoot dance and was fired immediately. Since then, cameras have been completely banned. Even so, many employees still wait eagerly for the ball each year, because it's one of the rare nights when they are allowed to call the king by his first name. Because Balmoral sits deep in the mountains and can only be reached through a long isolated road, it became the perfect place for royal secrets. Queen Victoria's unusual friendship with servant John Brown grew there, hidden from public attention. Edward VIII practiced his abdication speech at the estate. After Princess Diana died in 1997, Prince William and Prince Harry were intentionally kept away from the news for several hours so they could stay calm. But secrets rarely stay hidden forever. In 2019, a cleaner leaked photographs of the Royal Children's Treehouse, leading the palace to ban photography and cover windows for privacy. Years before that, another former employee revealed private stories, including the Queen Mother's love of Dubonnet and Prince Andrew's habit of demanding exactly 28 golf balls. He reportedly received $90,000 for the information, but later faced legal action. Now, even drones are kept away. In 2024, anti-drone sky barriers were added around the estate. Balmoral may appear silent from the outside, but private details still manage to escape. For younger staff members, the workday begins before sunrise. At 6 a.m., maids enter the oldest kitchen and start polishing the more than 200 pieces of silverware. Breakfast must be ready by 8. After that, they carry heavy tea kettles through freezing stone hallways while trying not to wake the royal dogs. Lunch preparation includes peeling around 18 kilograms of potatoes. Then they change into fresh uniforms and prepare afternoon tea at 4 p.m. Later comes the task of cleaning muddy hunting boots from the day's activities. Many workers don't reach their attic bedrooms until 9:45 at night. Now these shifts can last 15 hours. There is no overtime pay. Instead, an old line in the staff manual simply says, "Loyalty is its own reward." One former maid described the experience as giving your entire life to a shadow while never hearing a single thank you. Vacuum cleaners were forbidden because Queen Elizabeth disliked their noise. Every morning, 2 maids would kneel down and scrub carpets using small horsehair brushes. Cleaning a single hallway could take 45 minutes. Dust became so heavy that workers had to wash their aprons twice daily. In 1990, the head housekeeper admitted the ban added another 9 hours of labor every day, yet wages never increased. Some employees said the pain in their wrists became so severe they struggled to eat properly afterward. Still, almost nobody complained openly. From the outside, the castle appeared spotless and perfect. Inside, silent exhaustion spread beneath every freshly cleaned carpet. Speaking openly could get you in trouble. In July 1986, one maid was cleaning dust from her room when she overheard Prince Charles quietly speaking to Diana. Another servant quickly warned her to pretend she heard nothing. The following morning, she received a written warning. The rule inside the royal household was strict. Never acknowledge what the royals say. If it happened twice, you were dismissed and lost your $250 end-of-season bonus. Over time, many staff members started using hand signals, especially during breakfast service. Some workers later said Balmoral's hallways felt quieter than a library, not out of respect, but out of fear. Everyone felt watched. Silence became a way to survive. The wages didn't match the work. In 1983, the lowest-ranking housemaid earned about $18,000 before taxes. That was only around $4,000 higher than what the average British worker made. She worked 60 hours every week and lived inside the castle full-time. Yet some sections still used outdated toilets, forcing maids to empty chamber pots by hand. It took 3 years to become a first housemaid, and even then the salary only rose to about $21,500. Male gamekeepers, meanwhile, earned closer to $26,000. Many women quit after a single year. Royal historian Patrick Thorncroft later described the atmosphere as a quiet strain nobody discussed openly but everyone could feel, like standing outside in freezing weather while wearing silk gloves. One tradition shocked almost every new maid. If a royal walked out of a room and a maid stopped in moments later, she still had to curtsy to the empty room. The gesture was meant to honor the presence of the royal who had just left. During the Gillies Ball in 1987, staff reportedly performed this curtsy 61 times in one night. Some maids bruised their knees so badly that bandages were passed out alongside serving trays. One maid later said that it felt like bowing to ghosts. The message was clear. Tradition mattered more than personal comfort, and nobody challenged it. In March 1988, a French magazine released a report that sent shockwaves through the royal family. The source was a young maid who had spent only 8 weeks working at Balmoral the summer before. She earned roughly $10,000 for that short period, far more than she could have made over several years elsewhere. In exchange, she revealed details from inside the royal estate. She described dinner habits, personal routines, and even which dogs slept near Princess Anne's bedroom. British tabloids picked up the story within 2 days. Suddenly, millions of readers were hearing details that had always stayed hidden behind palace walls. One of the most emotional stories she shared came from August 1987. During a formal dinner, one guest accidentally drank from the finger bowl, confusing the rose-scented water for soup. Instead of embarrassing him, the Queen and the rest of the royal family quietly followed his lead. They all drank from their finger bowls so he wouldn't feel humiliated. Staff later counted 17 empty bowls after the dinner ended. Now, that small act revealed more about the family than any public speech could. In private, they would rather sip rosewater than make a guest feel ashamed. Not every story painted a warm picture, though. The Maid claimed that Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher received noticeably cold treatment during her 1987 summer visit. According to her account, Thatcher was not placed inside the castle with the other guests. Instead, she was assigned to a small cottage far away on the estate, a place staff nicknamed Siberia. The palace quickly denied the story and insisted Thatcher always stayed inside the castle. Still, people noticed that she did not appear at the following morning's grouse hunt. Whether it was official protocol or personal tension, newspapers seized on the story immediately. The image of two powerful women trapped in icy silence was too tempting for tabloids to ignore. When it came to Charles and Diana, the Maid described something much gentler. She often saw them acting like young people deeply in love. They held hands when they thought nobody was paying attention. Charles would personally bring Diana her coat before picnics, and Diana quickly slipped tips to young stable workers. But even those softer moments existed alongside harsh working conditions. Housemaids earned only about $75 per week. Overtime was often unpaid. Break times were announced by a bell, much like in the 19th century. There was warmth in personal interactions, but the household itself still operated under very old rules. The royal household reacted with anger after the article became public. Within hours, the palace released a strong statement calling it a serious betrayal of trust. An internal investigation began immediately, reviewing all 348 staff members who had worked during the previous season. Security measures changed overnight. New employees faced lengthy background investigations and had to sign strict confidentiality agreements connected to the Official Secrets Act. The warning was obvious to everyone. Speak to the press, and your career would be finished. Yet the Queen herself often seemed full of contradictions. The Maid recalled Christmas in 1990, when she watched Her Majesty carefully fold and save already used wrapping paper. The paper was stored inside an old tin that had once held dog treats. It reflected a wartime habit of saving and reusing things, even inside a palace surrounded by wealth and priceless treasures. Something unusual kept happening during life at Balmoral Castle and the royal estates. It wasn't the kind of scandal splashed across tabloid covers. It was quieter and harder to notice at first. Between early 2024 and mid-2025, King Charles's gardening team at Highgrove Estate slowly collapsed. Out of 12 gardeners, only one remained by the end. Everyone else had left. From the outside, the job looked peaceful and elegant. Perfect hedges, colorful flower displays, and royal visitors walking the grounds. But behind the scenes, the pressure was intense. Staff worked as much as 60 hours a week, caring for 15 acres of themed gardens visited by nearly 40,000 people every year. Their yearly pay sat around $22,000, which, after taxes, worked out to roughly $7 to $5 an hour, barely above minimum wage. Everything boiled over on July 5, 2025, when a gardener injured his shoulder while moving 180 kilograms of compost by himself. He wasn't given proper sick pay and ended up living on basic benefits of only 116 pounds a week. Just 9 days later, nearly the whole team resigned together. Leaked internal emails from that same month revealed that Charles regularly sent handwritten notes in black ink demanding unrealistic tasks. Some orders included removing a single weed overnight or replanting 700 flowers before he returned within 3 days. On July 18th, palace officials quietly admitted that there was a serious problem and brought in a crisis team to deal with it. But signs of trouble inside royal estates had existed for decades. Back in January 1983, a young maid named Fiona remembered the freezing attic bedrooms at Balmoral. She shared a tiny 12-square-meter room with 2 other maids. Thin windows let icy 10-degree winds inside, and frost collected on the walls while they slept. Portable heaters were banned because management considered them a fire danger. In 1987, workers were promised warmer dormitories by 1990, but those upgrades never came. By the end of the decade, more than 1/3 of the maids had quit. Interviews from a 1998 university study described rain leaking through damaged slate roofs. Maids woke at 6 a.m. every morning in damp uniforms that caused chilblains. 2 workers developed pneumonia and were dismissed after missing shifts. Electric heaters were finally added in 1992 following a government warning, but by then, many experienced maids had already left for better jobs in warm hotels around Inverness. Jump ahead to March 9, 2024. A former housekeeper posted a review on Indeed describing Balmoral's management as toxic. According to her, supervisors shouted at staff in front of guests, punished maids over tiny amounts of dust on picture frames, and even cut down their break times as punishment. That same week, 5 maids walked out. Some rooms remained uncleaned until 11 p.m., while supervisors stayed inside their offices. The review claimed the average wage was only £10.90 an hour, about £6 lower than the actual living wage in Britain. It also stated that overtime beyond 48 hours often went unpaid. Former employees soon replied to the review, supporting their claims. Palace officials tried to minimize the criticism, but leaked interviews later showed that 68% of departing workers blamed bullying or disrespect as the main reason they quit. Speaking publicly carried serious risks. Since 1950, royal staff members have been required to sign secrecy agreements stopping them from discussing what they witnessed or experienced. Those agreements were updated again in 2022 and remain active permanently. Anyone who breaks them could face lawsuits worth hundreds of thousands. Then, in October 2024, anonymous payroll documents were leaked. The figures stunned many people. A senior royal aide earned around $146,000 a year, while a maid earned only $19,500 and still had to share a room. The pay gap was more than 7 times higher. During the same period, the sovereign grant, which funds the royal family, climbed to $85.9 million, rising 41% over 10 years, while maids' salaries increased only 6%. Former royal valet Paul Burrell had already claimed in his 2003 book that workers who tried speaking publicly received legal warnings within 24 hours. The 2024 payroll leak restarted arguments inside Parliament. Yet because royal households are exempt from freedom of information laws, maids and cleaners still have very little ability to speak openly. These events reminded many people of older betrayals inside royal history. In 1950, Marion Crawford, who had served as governess to Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret for 16 years, released a memoir. Her stories were simple and human. She wrote about the young princesses swimming in public pools and standing in line for the underground like everyone else. The reaction from the royal family was brutal. The Queen Mother cut off all contact with her. Crawford lost her royal cottage and later died in 1988 while living under a different name. No member of the royal family attended her funeral. Then came Paul Burrell's memoir in 2003. He had once been one of Princess Diana's closest staff members, and Diana herself reportedly called him the only man I can trust. His book described private arguments at Balmoral along with personal letters. But before the memoir appeared, police raided his home in 2002 and discovered 342 royal items. In a surprising twist, the Queen personally intervened, saying she remembered discussing the items with him. On November 1, 2002, the case collapsed and Burrell was cleared. His memoir later sold more than 500,000 copies. Years afterward, he admitted that some details in the book had been invented to confuse investigators. The year 2024 brought another scandal tied to the royal family. After Princess Kate underwent surgery in January, someone at the London clinic allegedly tried to access her private medical records. The story became public in March, and investigators responded quickly. Staff members were warned they could face criminal charges. 3 employees came under investigation, and possible fines could reach £17.5 million. Many people called it the biggest invasion of royal privacy since the phone hacking scandals from the 2000s. But this wasn't the first time someone connected to the royals had exposed uncomfortable truths. Back in 1983, a former servant named Stephen Barry spoke publicly about his experience. He joined royal service at just 17 years old, and by age 21 had become Prince Charles's personal valet. His duties included laying out the prince's clothing, pressing kilts, and even changing shoelaces every single day. In May 1983, he released a book titled In Royal Service. In it, he revealed that a valet earned only around $6,000 a year, which was roughly half the salary of a London bus driver, despite being available around the clock. Within months of publishing the book, he lost his job. 3 years later, in 1986, he died from complications linked to AIDS. Still, his story pulled back the curtain on the class divide hidden inside Balmoral. Even books approved by the palace caused controversy. Angela Kelly, who worked as the Queen's dresser, received permission from the monarch herself to publish a memoir in 2019. Her book, The Other Side of the Coin, was released that October. Most of the stories were harmless. She wrote about breaking in the Queen's shoes herself and using dish soap to help fasten a brooch. Yet the book still caused tension. Some palace insiders claim Prince Charles disliked certain photos in it and thought that they crossed the line. It proved that even when someone has approval, speaking publicly about life inside Balmoral could still create problems. Then came the morning of August 4, 2025, when something unusual took place at Balmoral Castle. At exactly 7:30 a.m., the huge gates were closed and locked. Officials blamed Storm Flores, which brought winds reaching 90 miles per hour. But there was more happening behind the scenes. Nearly 2/3 of the room attendants had already walked out the previous evening. They said they refused to keep sleeping on floors and staying in huts with leaking roofs. Thousands of tourists had to be turned away. It marked the first time Balmoral had shut its doors to the public since the foot-and-mouth outbreak in 2001. By midday, rainwater was already leaking through old windows. Only 2 housekeepers remained inside, but the problems had been building for years. During 2024, maids began posting online about working conditions behind Balmoral's granite walls. Some workers say that they were expected to clean 12 royal suites before lunch. Many of those rooms contained antique chandeliers and historic tartan mirrors that had to be cleaned perfectly. One maid claimed that if Camilla's room wasn't completed within 55 minutes, she would lose her lunch break. Their pay was only about $10.90 an hour. Many eventually quit and found jobs at hotels instead. Even Queen Victoria wrote in her diary back in 1865 that she constantly struggled to find enough housemaids. More than a century later, the same issue remained. At the same time, King Charles was focused on a different goal. Between 2023 and 2025, he expanded Balmoral's organic gardens and added 30 beehives to the estate. His aim was for every meal served there to become carbon neutral. But the workload placed heavy pressure on gardeners. Tractors were banned, so nearly everything had to be done by hand. Rain barrels replaced standard hoses. Workers reportedly pushed wheelbarrows close to 90 times each day just to keep up. Since March 2022, nearly every senior gardener across the royal estates had resigned. Most of them were earning only minimum wage, despite the king reportedly having a personal fortune worth more than £1.1 billion. One worker said he lifted over 200 kilos of compost daily and developed carpal tunnel because of it. Handwritten notes from the king, demanding all chemicals be removed before sunrise, were pinned inside the potting shed like instructions from another era. Reports later showed that staff members were earning an average of only £11 5 pence per hour. That was around 15% below the national average for hospitality work. Whistleblowers claimed the problem came from the budget policy that limited wages to only 7% of estate income. But after Queen Elizabeth's death, tourism revenue had reportedly increased by 22%. According to experts, raising staff pay to fair levels would cost only about $187,000 more each year. That amount was reportedly less than the cost of resurfacing the private helipad. Still, the issue remained unresolved, and more workers kept leaving. Across 2024 and 2025, staff turnover reached 38%, which was twice the normal rate for the industry. The breaking point came in June 2023. A young maid identified only as Heather Glenn posted on an online gossip forum. She claimed her emergency leave request had been denied while her mother was preparing for surgery. According to her post, she was told she needed to stay behind and starch Princess Kate's linens instead. She quit that same day. Screenshots she shared appeared to show that she had used only 2 of her 10 leave days that year. The story exploded online, attracting more than 11,000 comments. 2 weeks later, a quiet job posting appeared online for a new room attendant. The position offered £10.50 an hour and stated that they needed someone urgently. Palace officials called the timing a coincidence, but insiders claimed 5 more maids resigned shortly afterward. Managers eventually brought in temporary workers from Aberdeen and paid them around $19 an hour, nearly double the pay of the loyal employees who had stayed. Thanks for watching this video. We'll see you in the next one.